You're listening to Bottomshelf Bitcoin. This is episode 48.
Relax. Enjoy your coffee. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Take a chill pill. Okay.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Bottomshelf Bitcoin, the podcast that puts Bitcoin knowledge within everyone's reach. As always, I'm your host, Josh Humphrey, and my guest today is DJ Seeds. He is the creator of the new TFTC.io, as well as LNcast, a lightning-powered podcatcher. And so we're going to be talking about all those things and his story as well. DJ, welcome.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me on. I really like what you're doing here, so pretty cool to be on.
Thanks. Yeah, I really like the new TFTC website. For people who don't know, that's Tales from the Crypt. Again, I'd be surprised if anybody listens to this show and is not listening to Tales from the Crypt, but that's Marty Bent's podcast. So you recently redid their website, and then you've also got LNcast, which is, well, I'll let you explain it here in a little bit, but before we get into that, why don't you tell us your story, like what you were doing before Bitcoin and what kind of sucked you in?
Yeah. So before Bitcoin, I was in high school. So the first time I actually heard about Bitcoin was through this news show that we listened to in high school. It was called Channel 1 News, and they had this segment called the Next Big Thing. And every week they'd have some new technology on there, and everyone would vote on whether they thought it was going to be the next big thing or not. So they had like hoverboards and whatever other technologies on there. But one week they had Bitcoin on there, and I thought, wow, this thing is pretty cool. It's internet money. And I was always into technology, so I looked into it a little more, and I decided I wanted to get my hands on some. So I researched on how to buy it. It turns out you needed a credit card, which I didn't have. So talked to my dad. I tried to convince him to let me pay him cash in exchange for him buying me some Bitcoin. And he said, no, that's stupid. You're going to lose all your money. So that was basically it for my first introduction to Bitcoin, and since I couldn't get my hands on it and play around with it, I basically forgot about it for a while. But yeah, till this day, my dad just always, every time Bitcoin comes up in the news, he asks me, how rich would we be? How rich would we be if we bought X dollars worth? And that X just keeps going up every time. So the first time it was like $200. Then like 500. Now it's up to like $10,000 worth.
So when was that you first heard about it and tried to get him to buy you some?
Yeah, this was I think late 2012.
Oh wow!
So the price was around $100 or $200 then. But like my answer is always What really would have happened is we would have sold at the first big price move. So
right.
Like it would have doubled or halved in a week, and then we would either hate ourselves for our decision and say we were dumb for buying it, or we were super smart for doubling our investment. So it's not really that big of a deal, but he's still upset about it.
I think that's a good point. My friend that first told me about Bitcoin, and I've had this conversation a couple times, and I'm like, I'll look at him and be like, I wish it hadn't taken me 6 months or a year from you first telling me about it to get it. And he's like, yeah, but you wouldn't, because you weren't convinced of it at the time, you would have sold when it hit 1,000 or whatever, and you would have sold it all or most of it, and so you'd be in the same situation.
Or you lose it on Mt. Gox or something.
Right, exactly. So yeah, it's good to keep that perspective that like, if you're really only saying that because you want the gains, then you would have either gotten the gains and sold out far lower than it is now, or when it crashed, you'd have been so upset that you'd have sold it off to get rid of it and cut your losses. So yeah,
Yeah,
anyways, keep
definitely.
going.
Yeah. So after that, I forgot about it for a while, and I went to college, studied computer engineering. So somewhere in the middle of my college experience, I read another article about Bitcoin, and I was like, wow, this thing's still alive, and maybe I can understand it now, now that I'm actually studying how computer systems work. So I read the white paper, and I was blown away. I thought it was pretty awesome, a great technology, and then I started watching Andreas videos, listening to Bitcoin podcasts, and all the rabbit hole stuff that everyone knows. So, yeah, that's my story.
Very cool. And so when did you first start developing anything related to Bitcoin, or like websites or anything?
Yeah, so the first time I actually developed anything was LNcast, and that I did that in early 2018.
Okay.
Actually, not that long ago. But I've been very interested in it. At the time, I was just very busy with school. So, but love to do Bitcoin development and want to do more. So, yeah.
Awesome. So, all right. Well, then go ahead and tell us about LNcast. It's from what I can see, and correct me if I'm wrong. Basically, you, as a content producer, like for myself, I put in my my RSS feed and it spits it out and then kind of puts this lightning powered paywall in front of each episode.
Yeah, that's the basic idea. The real reason behind my making it is that it's clear that podcasts have great value with people, and they've been very valuable to me. So I'm always listening to podcasts, learning about new topics. Every time I want to learn about something new, I search the internet for the best podcasts on that topic and listen to it while I'm commuting or doing my laundry or whatever. So it's clear that podcasts have great value. But the issue is that in order for the podcast creator to capture any of that value, they have to either become like a mattress salesman or go on something like Patreon, which has its issues also. So minimum payments, you can only have as low as $1 a month in payments. So that's a pretty high bar for some people to pay. So the idea behind LNcast is to allow the content creators to monetize just like as if they're doing any other service to people. So the users just pay per podcast. So what that looks like is you go on our website, LNcast.com, and you can pick your favorite podcast. Right now we currently have this podcast, Bottomshelf Bitcoin, and Tales from the Crypt, Marty Bent's podcast that we were talking about earlier. So yeah, you go to the site, you pick your podcast episode, you click buy, and a lightning invoice comes up, and you pay for it, and just like that, you're listening to the podcast. So that's the idea behind it. I really just want to help content creators focus on what really matters, which is actually creating content rather than reaching out to advertisers and actually working on selling ads. So yeah, that's the idea behind the site.
And are you getting a cut of any of that?
No, not at all.
Why? You should be. I think you should, because I think it's a great product, but...
Yeah, so there are technical challenges there. So the first version of LNcast I released on testnet, like I said, early 2018. So it was one of the first Lightning apps on testnet, right after testnet Lightning launched. So And the way that this worked at that time is it was a custodial model. So I would actually receive the Bitcoin on behalf of the content creators. And then the content creators would withdraw their balance once it's accumulated, also over Lightning. So there are some issues with this. One is there's a little bit of a question about the legality of it, because there are money transmitter laws here in the U.S. Where if you're taking money from one person and giving it to another, then you have certain reporting requirements placed on you. So I don't think that they would come after me, but I wanted to minimize the possibility of me going to jail. And also, as a big fan of self-sovereignty, I just wanted to design myself out of the system so that payments go straight from the users to the content creators. So that's why I'm not getting a cut now. So that was the initial version. The new version, now on mainnet, and it was actually Pierre Rochard's idea to integrate it with BTCPay server, which is an awesome product. If you haven't checked it out, listeners, you really should. BTCPay server allows you to accept Bitcoin payments. It has altcoins if you want, but it also recently added support for Lightning, so that was really cool. So now the way that the site works is that content creators have their own BTCPay server connected to their Lightning node, and they pair their BTCPay server with the site, and the site requests invoices for the users and displays them to the user. The user pays the invoice, and the site unlocks the audio so that people can actually listen. So it goes straight from the user's Lightning wallet to the content creator, and I don't touch it at all.
Yeah, that's very cool. I was gonna mention. I forgot that when I set it up, it did go through BTCPay server. But I was even gonna mention BTCPay server because the whole a lot of I was more in on their Slack channels and stuff. I don't know, like a year or so ago when they were first kind of getting everything started, and that was a big thing. Was just like trying to maintain a way to not have custody because of the money transmitter laws and all of that. I do want to say, because I know that whenever you mention altcoins, people are gonna get triggered and stuff. Just in defense of Nicolas Dorier and Rockstar Dev and several of those guys that are working on BTCPay server, I don't think any of those main guys are working on altcoins. It's open source, and they don't refuse people who pull and work on the altcoin side of it themselves. If they work on it, the altcoin side, and they make it work and they submit a PR, then if it works, then they merge it in. But
yeah, definitely. And those guys are awesome. I've also hung out on their Slack, and they're super helpful. If you have an issue with BTCPay server, they're like right on it, and literally they'll fix it in minutes, which is absolutely awesome. You don't see that kind of stuff in mainstream finance, so I think that's pretty cool. And another thing I want to shout out is the Lightning developer Slack, which you can find at dev.lightning.community. That was indispensable for me as I was figuring out how to create this app. The people on there are awesome. Like having the option to talk to the likes of roast beef is just insane. So it's an awesome community. There's people there like Alex Bosworth, Justin from BitRefill, and if you're creating your own app, there's people all over that site that just want to test your app at any stage. One person that comes to mind is this person, Molly, who really tested out my app for me. So I just wanted to shout out to that awesome resource.
This is something that I think it's easy to forget how cool this is in the Bitcoin world. Is that these devs and stuff, they open up these Slack channels and these Telegram groups and stuff, and like in the mainstream world, you don't have access to these things. Like, can you imagine Apple just saying like, "Hey, come join our Slack channel," and being in there with like back in the day, like just having access to Steve Jobs or any of their developers, or like jumping on with the head devs at Google or Microsoft in some Telegram channel. Like,
oh yeah,
you don't get that anywhere else. But you're, like you say, like you can get on with roast beef or Nicolas Dorier, or like I'm in the Samurai Wallet Telegram groups, and those guys are in there and they'll respond to you and stuff. So it's a very cool thing. Just I feel like people who are Bitcoin developers are really down to earth for the most part.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's pretty awesome, and I'm so grateful for all those people. So yeah.
Well, very cool. So I kind of tangented at us when you're talking about how it's non-custodial, and you set it up through BTCPay server. So right now, it's set up in a way that it takes makes use of an existing RSS feed, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So I'm just thinking, I think you and I had talked about this previously, but like if someone, let's say someone was a podcaster and wanted to create a feed. Actually, let's jump back. I'm going to come back to this in a second, but before that, I think this model is really great, and I am kind of working right now on, and this intertwines with what I was going to say, as far as advertising, because, like you say, there are those podcasters out there. I'm sure you can name several big podcasters that you think, okay, they have a really good show, but I get so sick of listening to them read ads for other people, like. And
as much as I like Cash App and Match, yeah.
I wasn't even thinking Bitcoin. I was thinking mainstream. I was thinking Tom Woods or.
Oh yeah, definitely.
He's like, and I bought. I'll be honest. I bought Away luggage because Tom Woods was always shilling Away luggage, and it's good. It is good luggage. I mean, cool. They're not paying me. It's nice. But I feel like the king of the airport. That's what he always says. But it's like it gets so tiresome having to. It's the difference between watching television and watching something on Netflix, right? Like you just don't want to be interrupted by the advertisement.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
So, like, but for the first year of this podcast, I didn't, because, like you say, there's also the other side of, so mainstream or prior to any recent time is like, if you wanted to do advertising on your podcast, you had to have content that got enough audience. You had to be able to have some kind of analytics to go and then go to a company or an agency and say, hey, I get this many downloads a month, or this many downloads an episode. And then say, hey, if you want this, you can support me. You can advertise. I'll read your ads, and that gets you exposure to this many people. And so then there, you've got to negotiate with them, or I think, by this time there are agencies you can go to and they would pair you up, but still you're having, as the content creator, you're having to go forward and make this effort to seek these people out. And so I didn't do anything for the first year because, I mean, quite honestly, I'm still a smaller show, and that's fine. I'm okay with that because I'm not beholden to anybody. And if I miss a week or two or a month of making episodes, it's fine. That's what's great about doing this and not being beholden to any kind of contract for advertisers. And then I got on Anchor, which is nice because Anchor automatically pairs you up. But I've been thinking, since I saw LNcast, I've been thinking, okay, so what could I do to maybe get off of that? Because like I said, even with Anchor, if you're listening to this right now, you're probably listening to it. I've produced it through Anchor, and it gets interrupted. There's a mid-roll read,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like there's a part where it skips and it does some little transition music, and then you hear me give some ad, and then it does the transition music, and it comes back to the rest of the show. And I find that annoying. I'm making it, but I find that annoying. And so this is a really cool way. I don't know why there aren't more podcasters using LNcast. So
Yeah,
anyway,
definitely.
I'm rambling now, but
yeah, I think the reason there aren't more podcasters using LNcast is that not every podcaster already has a BTCPay server up and running. So that is a little bit of a barrier, but it is super easy to set up. But I do like what you're saying. I also do think that it has gone in a better direction. So like you said, you used to have to go to an actual ad agency, which puts the bar really high. And now all you have to do is read a little ad spot, and you get paid based on the number of people that go see that and enter your code, right? So this is just one more step in that direction, making it much more connected to your actual listeners, and getting the value for the value that you're giving them, which you definitely are giving them value. So yeah, I think it's a step in the right direction. And yeah.
Okay, so I've been thinking about this. I have a Patreon that nobody uses, which is fine.
Right.
My feelings aren't hurt. I'm not saying that, poor pitiful me. So, but I know that Patreon allows you to create an RSS feed that only your patrons can see. Like when they sign up as a patron, they get, they can click a little link and it'll take them to and show them the RSS feed, and then they can copy and paste that into their favorite podcatcher. Right.
Right.
I'm just spitballing here. Could I take that if I said, okay, I'm going to upload to Anchor my normal way, but then I'm also going to do a version where I have no ad reads, and I put that on my Patreon. So now it's behind either the Patreon wall, or I put that same RSS feed into LNcast. And then so you could get the ad-free reads through either being a patron or paying for it episode by episode on LNcast. Would that work?
Yeah, definitely. So that's the big idea. I think it would make a ton of sense for podcasters to have two versions of their feed, one an ad-free feed and one with ads. And then you put up your one with ads on LNcast, and then people have an incentive to actually go look at LNcast. So I think that's definitely a good way to go. I do have some ideas about how to make that even better in the future that we can get to. But yeah, I would definitely suggest doing that.
Okay, I'm going to do that. I don't know if I will have that done by the time this episode comes out, listeners, but I know that I am working on that. It's going to be a matter of if I can backdate episodes when I upload them to Patreon, that will make the process much easier. If I cannot, then I'm going to have to upload them in order, and the dates are going to be all screwy, but that'll be fine. I mean, people can deal with it, but yeah, I'm working on that.
Awesome.
Then by the time this comes out, I will be working on it. I don't know if I'll have that accomplished yet, but okay.
Awesome.
All right. You said you had other ideas on that.
Yeah. I can go into that if you want.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So to understand the other ideas, I guess we have to look at the drawbacks. I didn't make a perfect product, unfortunately. But I know. So I think the biggest drawback to the way LNcast currently works is that everyone already has their favorite podcast app, including me. It has all their favorite features, their 1.5 times speed. It skips the silence. and it notifies them when every podcast gets out. So users don't want to go to a website, a separate website to listen to their show. They just want to have it on their phone, a couple clicks away. So that's the big barrier here. So without a change, LNcast is basically, it's a good way to support some great podcasts, which is pretty cool. But I think it could be even more than that. So the thing that we would have to do is to find a way to not pull the users from where they want to be. And that's kind of tough, but I have a little bit of an idea that isn't fully fleshed out. But basically how it works is through an extension of RSS feeds. So I don't know if the listeners will know how RSS works or how their podcast feed works behind the scenes. But basically, every podcast is one big XML file, and that XML file has like a standard schema to it. So it has to have certain metadata in there, and then it has a list of episodes, and each of those episodes has a link to the actual audio. So what we could do is add an extension field to each episode that has a URL to request a Lightning invoice. So a user's app would be able to go to that URL, get an invoice, they could pay it, and then they would need a way to prove they bought the episode. But if they could do that in a standard way, then you can have a hosting service that has actually two different versions of each episode in one feed. So you could have your ad-free version, and you could have your ad version in that same feed. And this would be totally transparent to existing podcast apps. So they would just go to that link in the RSS feed and get the normal audio with the ads in it. But if you have an app that has onboarded to this new standard with Lightning, then you could pay for that, the ad-free episode. So I think in this way, you could have like a gradual move away from ads. You wouldn't have to manage like two real feeds. You could have one feed in a hosting provider that splits it up basically. So that's the idea I have right now. Could change, but I think that would be best.
Yeah, that's very cool to have it all in the same feed.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm just thinking now about it. Yeah.
Right. So then it would be a standard. So if you have a podcast app that implements it, like that could become one of the cool features, and you wouldn't have to leave all your other cool features behind. So that's the idea.
Very cool. Does this work for, like, if you've got an RSS feed with, I don't know, do people even do this anymore? I know back in the day there were like video podcasts. I think that's kind of gone away with YouTube, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in theory it would work. I would have to just add support for it, but it would be a quick change. So if anyone is actually interested in doing that, I would definitely implement it. But yeah, as far as I know, RSS does support video, and also you can have like text articles. So both of those are pretty possible. I just haven't done them yet.
So is that, would you say text articles? And I know that you and I had kind of briefly discussed that before. Is that different from the show notes? Is like a different set? Because I have a loose understanding of how like RSS feeds and XML work, but within that RSS feed, is that a different section, like a text file or something like that? Would that be different than what's considered the show notes? Because I know that when I go on LNcast, I can look at I'm pretty sure right now I can go in and I can look at the show notes without having to pay the Lightning invoice. But if I want to listen to the audio, I have to pay the Lightning invoice, correct?
Yes, Correct. So basically, in RSS, there's are like two levels. So you have the feed level, which is your podcast, but it can be a collection of anything. So it can be a collection, like a list of articles or a list of episodes of a podcast in audio or video. And then there's the item level, which is the actual podcast episode. And it has some metadata there. So your show notes are actually in the summary metadata. But for an actual article, it would be actually on the level of the actual episode. So instead of there being an episode in the list, it would be like just an article.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
I guess blogs used to, no, yeah, it does. I have to stop and I think about it because I'm a visual person, so I'm picturing in my head that, but yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So, yeah, because I guess back in the day, people don't really write blogs in a personal blog style. Most people don't anymore, I guess. But for a while, people got blogs to their email. It was an RSS feed, right? Like,
Yep.
They would just every day, you have your blogspot.com email feed, your email digest or whatever, and it would send you like all the ones that you were subscribed to. Yeah,
I guess this is still going on. So Marty actually got a request from someone on Twitter to publish an RSS feed of his daily newsletter, Marty's Bent.
Mm-hmm.
So we gave it to them. So we actually have an RSS feed with all of his articles on his website. So.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that still works then. Okay. So yeah, that makes sense. And it's in that same style architecture or whatever that the article would go in. Okay.
Yep, definitely.
What was I going to ask you before we go on? Because I do want to talk about the TFTC, but and this is just something I was curious about. So when is there? I haven't seen a way to display it right now, but this would be something interesting, at least for me, since I've got you as a captive audience or guest or whatever.
Right.
But I'm just going to show you all my ideas. Is there a way to see analytics on which episodes get the most views or the most hits? Because from what I've seen, I can't tell a difference. Like on if I pull up my Zap wallet,
mm-hmm.
I can see that I got a payment that somebody bought an episode, but
right.
I can't. But I didn't see any kind of like label or anything on that says which episode it's from. Let me pull that up just to double check that I'm not lying to you or to the audience.
No, you're right. So you won't see that label in your Lightning wallet, but where you will see it is in BTCPay server. So if you go to your BTCPay server, then let me pull up mine here so I can show you. If you go to invoices, and then you click one of the details buttons for the invoice, then it actually has the item code is LNcast when it comes from my service, and then the item description is the actual title of the episode. So you can do all that accounting there in BTCPay server, which is pretty cool.
People are going to hear my clacky keyboard. Unlock me in.
Yeah, that's okay. But yeah, if you go to invoices.
Okay, invoices.
Then click one of them.
And then hit details.
Details, yeah. So that gives you the item description.
Oh, item description. Okay.
Yep. And then what's even cooler is that from that invoices page, you can export all of the transactions into CSV. So then you get an Excel sheet, basically, of all of your invoices. So then you can group by that episode title, and you can figure out which ones are doing best, and yeah, what topics you can double down on. So yeah.
Oh, here we go. Invoice item description. It's like column T, or it is for mine anyways. And then you can, very cool.
Yep, there you go. And you can create like a table out of it and do a pivot table. And, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, BTCPay server is awesome. There's so many cool stuff.
Yeah. I'll put links in the show notes if anybody hasn't heard my interview with Nicolas Dorier on why he created it and everything. And it's honestly, even from that interview, they've added so much. So I don't know, maybe I should reach out and do a follow-up interview with him. But I feel like they're just constantly iterating. It's one of those things that, like, by the time I get an interview done and out, they'll have more stuff that's already been added to BTC server that's already not an interview.
Definitely.
So.
I don't know how they do it. It's very impressive to me, but they have an awesome product.
I don't think he sleeps. I've said it before. I told him, I said, I think you're a robot and I don't think you sleep, but
I totally believe that.
And then the other thing that I thought was really cool, I found this the other day because I follow the LN podcasts on Twitter, is it's set up, and anytime a new episode is put out, now I assume you're not doing this manually because it just happened so fast as soon as I uploaded the episode. I saw that it tweeted that there was a new episode in the feed.
Yep. Yeah. So I do have a Twitter bot that every time an episode is added to LNcast, it'll tweet out. So this is my stopgap solution because people aren't going to get actual notifications from my website, but they can get notifications from my Twitter bot. So yeah, that is LN Podcasts on Twitter if you guys are interested. LNcast was taken for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah. Okay, so anything else besides the things that we've talked about in the works for LNcast?
No, nothing much other than trying to get more podcasts on there. So if any other podcasters are listening, I know you guys listen to each other's podcasts. Yeah, reach out to me. I'd love to help get you on. I think Josh can probably say that it's been like super easy to use, right?
Yeah, it has been. And the few times that I ran into a little kink, you were very, very helpful and responsive on Twitter to walk me through and get me over any of the bumps and hiccups. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, anyone that owns a Bitcoin podcast, I'm going to be trying to get them on the LNcast so that we have a good selection of awesome Bitcoin podcasts on there. So that's basically what is in the short-term plans for LNcast. And
I mean, I guess the way it's set up, it doesn't even have to be Bitcoin podcasts, right? I mean,
definitely.
Any RSS feed.
Yep. I think there's some opportunity for some other topics, certainly in the libertarian space, because they're battling the deplatforming issues with Patreon and others. So I think that could be an option. There still is the technical barrier that you have to actually run a Lightning node. So that sort of limits the possible podcasts we could have on there. But yeah, anyone that has any podcast, I'd love to have you on there.
Yeah. I will say, for anyone who hears that and is nervous, that is not as difficult as it might sound to have your own Lightning node. I mean, I've got multiple. So I've got a home node, and I mean, you could do something as simple as Pierre's node launcher. Very simple to get a Lightning node up and running, and then But you can also, and I'm gonna forget his actual name, but he used to go by Bitcoin T-shirt or Bitcoin shirt on the BTCPay Slack channels. But he has a great step-by-step tutorial on the whole process of setting up an online shop and a BTCPay server with a WordPress online shop and all that. And in that, he goes through, or maybe it's a different tutorial. I'll have to go find it, and I'll put links in the show notes. But he has a really great thing where he goes through how to get a Lightning node up and running for your BTCPay server through Luna node, I think, because the great thing about Luna node is they'll take Bitcoin as payment. So
that's awesome.
So you never have to send them credit card information or anything like that. So I'll find those tutorials, and he walks you through step by step, and it's really simple. So you can do that, and you don't have to necessarily even run one out of your own home, but you can do it either way. It's not as hard as it sounds, or as daunting as it was, maybe even been 6-8 months ago. So
yeah, and it's worth it. It's super fun to use, so I definitely recommend getting one.
Okay, let's transition them for a second. How did you? This is just my personal curiosity. How did you get hooked up with doing the TFTC website? Like, how did you meet Marty?
Yeah, so it is kind of interesting. I actually met him originally through the testnet version of LNcast. So he was, I believe, the second podcast we had on LNcast. And he gave me a bunch of great feedback that helped me improve. So we talked during that. And then I went to Consensus in 2018 in New York, and went to the BitDevs meetup, which is absolutely awesome. And so I went to that meetup and met Marty there, went out and got some drinks, and and then I guess he was looking for someone to work on his site, and he was really interested in the micropayment Lightning angle of things. So I guess he thought of me because I've already done something like it. So yeah, he reached out, and I was all over that. He's got a great podcast, and now pretty cool website.
Yeah, it's nice. Like, it's just clean, and I don't know. It's one of those things. I don't know. My wife and I call it the Pixar effect. We're big Pixar fans, and it's one of those things, like, if you don't notice anything about it, it means they've done a really good job. And if you watching all the behind the scenes on Pixar movies, you realize, like, how crazy these people are about details. Like, I think it was Brave. They go on to this, like, huge, long explanation of, like, they sent people over to Scotland to, like, look at this moss, to figure out how this moss moved in the wind so that they could model this moss. And you're just sitting there watching, and you're like, this is crazy that you're spending this much time and attention. Like, nobody's going to notice. But the thing is, you won't really notice what's off, but you'll just, like, something in your brain will just be like, this is just off, But if you spend tons of effort in making it look good, it's just, like, totally unnoticed because it's just pleasing to the eye. I don't know how else to explain it. I'm kind of going off on tangent here. I was trying to say that, like, you're the site that you created is clean and nice, and there's nothing that jumps out that you're like, oh, that could be better or whatever. Like, it's nice.
Yeah, thank you. That's pretty cool to hear. It definitely wasn't that way at the start, so there was a little bit of looking at moss, but I didn't go all the way to Scotland for it. But we have done a few iterations of it, and I think it's doing pretty well. For those of you who don't know, it's tftc.io, and there are some cool things on there. There's a dime bag, which is going to be a collection of, like, little widgets where you can play with things on Lightning. The first little widget is a final thought generator. So in Marty's daily newsletter, he has a final thought on every newsletter. So he has hundreds of newsletters, and so you can pay 10 cents on this page to get a random final thought and a link to the newsletter. So that's just the first iteration there. And then there's also some merch, which I believe they're out of stock in currently, but definitely will be more coming soon. And you can buy that with Bitcoin also through BTCPay server. And they have a contribute page, which you can donate just some Bitcoin, or you can buy like a thought that they'll read on Rabbit Hole Recap, and also you can buy them a whiskey, which then they will drink during the podcast, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So you do the programming then, I guess, on the back end to set all this up, that like of generating the invoices and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I did everything between the website and BTCPay server. So my code gets the invoices and then displays them for you and makes it super easy to make your purchase. Would
you be able to do something like this, like from a Twitter bot? I'm trying to think if there would be a way to connect that to, like, if you already had BTCPay server with Lightning set up.
Mm-hmm.
This is petty. It's fine. I had this idea, and I was in a group, in a Telegram group, and the other day someone was talking about how we should. It said something to the effect of basically like, like the idea of a swear jar, but like every time the best thing to do would just be ignore people like Craig Wright and just, but like have a swear jar anytime somebody brings him up that they've got to, put money in. And I was just thinking, what if you had a Twitter bot that would, like you'd probably have to set limits on how often it was activated, but like every time somebody mentioned him, it would have search strings that it would run, and every time it would just reply to them like, the best thing to do would just be ignore this. You've been caught mentioning Craig Wright. Please deposit 100,000 sats into the CSW swear jar or something like that, and just like print a little QR code to.
Yeah, that would definitely be possible. You might run into some issues with the Twitter terms of service if you're just probably commenting on random people. But if they at you, then you could do that. So someone that sees someone use Craig Wright, then someone else could tag your bot. And then your bot
like timestamps or whatever it's called.
Exactly. So I think it's totally possible, and yeah, you should do it with BTCPay server.
All right, whoever does it out there, I don't have time to do it, but if somebody out there does that, you feel free to take that idea. Just let me know that you've done it so I can shill it. So
yeah, definitely. And Craig Wright related bots are awesome. So.
All right. So what's next for you? Like, what are you working on next?
Oh, I don't know. So I'll continue to improve LNcast, and I'm sure I'll do more work on tftc.io. And we have some things coming out soon that should be fun. So keep your eyes peeled. And other than that, yeah, I'm always looking for cool projects to work on. So always thinking about new things to do. I have a few things that I might do, but yeah, I'm wide open, just exploring the world of Bitcoin and Lightning. So yeah.
Very cool. DJ, how can we keep up with you and your work?
You can follow me on Twitter at DJ_seeds. You can follow LNcast at LN Podcast. I'll probably post announcements on there also, but you'll also get notified after every new podcast or episode is added. Go check out LNcast.com.
Awesome. So like I said earlier, I'm gonna be working on migrating my stuff so that I have I'm tired. It's late. An ad-free version on LNcast. God, why is that so hard to say? Okay. All right. I need to call it quits. I need to go to bed.
All right.
So I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate your product. It's very cool. So keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for putting your podcast on Ellencast. And I'm totally looking forward to the ad-free version. I think that'll be an awesome addition to the site. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, you take care.
You too. Bye.
Okay, that's going to do it for this episode. Big thanks to DJ Seeds. That was a lot of fun, and he's got a great product up there. I'm about halfway through, so after recording that episode, I've got about half of my episodes uploaded to Patreon, so I have not converted the LNcast version over to ad-free quite yet, but I'm working on it. It should be out by the following episode. So I've got about half of them up on Patreon, which is where the feed comes from. So if you want the ad-free versions, you can become a patron, and but know that only through episode like 27 is up there right now. But if you in about a week, or at least sometime in the next week, by the time the next episode is out, that should be available either through Patreon or through LNcast on an episode by episode basis. So go check that out. Go follow DJ on Twitter and LNcast on Twitter, or I guess it's at LN Podcast, I think is what it is. I'll have in the show notes the link, so check it out. Whatever I put there, that's what it is. To follow on Twitter for the LNcast podcast, and that will update you whenever a new episode of this or Tales from the Crypt or any other podcast that gets put up on there is out. And check out LNcast. It's a cool website. All right. You guys know the drill. Follow me on Twitter, Bottomshelf BTC. Check out bottomshelfbitcoin.com. If you want to support the show, the best thing to do is share it and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Give us a rating on iTunes. That's always helpful. And that's going to be it for now. For Bottom Shelf Bitcoin, I'm Josh Humphrey. Thanks for listening.